Today's daf is daf Lamed Zayin, and in the last word on daf Lamed Vav is kafats. So who jumped into the water at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf first? It was Shifto Shel Binyamin V'Yor Yam Tchila Shenemar Pasuk in Tilim Sham Binyamin Sa'ir Rodem. So the young Binyamin was Rodem. What does Rodem mean? And the Brisa says, Al Tikri Rodem El Raid Yam, that he, Binyamin, went down into the Yam first. For Yisori Yehuda, there was a tremendous jealousy on the part of the leaders of Shevet Yehuda, and they were Rogman Oso. They started throwing stones at the Bnei Binyamin, Shenemar, and this is the second part of that same Pasuk in Tilim. Sore Yehuda Rigmasan. So the leaders of Yehuda were throwing stones. Lefichach, but Binyamin was rewarded for the fact that he took that initiative, Bizrizus, in order to fulfill the command of Hashem to go down to the Yam. Zocha Binyamin Atzadik V'Nasush Pezichan Ligvura, which means that the Beis Hamikdash would be built, or at least the Kodesh Kadoshim would be in the Chelek of Binyamin, Shenemar, Ubein Ksefav Shachen, that the Shekhinah Shora in the middle of his Chelek. Oh, well, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Rabbi Meir, you got it wrong. Lo kacha yamais, that's not what happened. Ella, just the opposite. Ze omer, ein ani yored chil yam. Ze omer, ein ani yored chil yam. Nobody wanted to be the first to jump into the water. There were no volunteers. Kafatz Nachshon ben Aminadov, and Nachshon is from Shevet Yehuda. V'yored liyam tchil, he jumped into the waters. Shenemar pasuk in Hosea, Sivavuni v'kachash Ephraim u'b'mirma beis Yisrael, v'Yehuda od rod im kel v'mkedosh v'nem. None of the Shvatim relied on Hashem. They basically rejected Emunah B'tachon, and they refused to go down into the waters because the waters hadn't split yet. But Shevet Yehuda had a faith in Hashem, and as represented by Nachshon, they went down into the water. And that was a Kiddush Shem Shamayim b'far Hesia, that they believed in Hashem and in Moshe. The Olav, and regarding Shevet Yehuda, Mefarish b'Kabbalah, we have in Divrei Kabbalah, in this case in Tehillim, that they jumped into the water even before it was split. And Yehuda was basically praying to Hashem, Hoshieni Hashem, Elokim, Kibo, Maim ad Nafesh. The waters started rising to his nostrils. Tavati, Biven, Mitsula, V'ein Mamad, Basi B'maki Mayim, V'shibol Shtatfani, Al Tishtaftini, Pshibos Mayim, Al Tivleini Mitsula. And Yehuda prayed to Hashem that he shouldn't be brought down into the water and drowned. Biosa Shah, at that moment when the Shevet Yehuda went into the Yam, by Moshe Marach B'Tfila, and Moshe was davening and davening. Amalek Kodesh Baruch Hu, Yedidai Tovim Bayam, my beloved are about to Chas Shalom drown in the sea. Vata Marach B'Tfila. Funny, this is not the time for Tefillah. Amalek Funny. So Moshe said to him, "Okay, Rimon Shalom, Umav Yodi Lasos. What do I have in my repertoire? What are my options here besides prayer?" In other words, the people of Israel should have faith. They should continue into the Yam, and if they have that faith, I will split the water for them. Fiata, and you, Moshe, harem esmatcha uneteis es yodcha. In other words, lift up your staff, and I'll split the Yam. Lefichach, as a reward for the fact that a leader of Shevet Yehuda, named Nachshon, jumped into the water first. That he was Makadosh Shem Shemaim. Zoche Yehuda Lasos Mem Shola. B'Yisrael, Yehuda was Zoche to be the Moshe, the Melech, B'Yisrael Shenemar. Hoysa Yudol Kodsho Yisrael Mam Shlosav. that as a result of the Kiddush Hashem of Yehuda, when they left Mitzrayim, Yehuda be Zochet to be the Melech and the Moshel al Yisrael. And immediately afterwards, the pasuk says, Hayom Ra'av Hayanos. And the Brisa says, Matam Hoisi Yehuda L'Kadsho B'Yisrael Mavshalosa Mishum Hayom Ra'av Hayanos. Why was Yehuda chosen to be the leader of Israel? Because of his midah of Gvura and Emunah, when b'Mesiras Nefesh, he jumped into the water. And he was Zocher, therefore, to Malchus because of those midos of Gvura and Mesiras Nefesh. Tanya, we went to the Brisa, and now we're going back to the Amidas Hashvatim Agrizim Ha'Evel. Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov Omer, Ef Shalomar Levi Lamata. You cannot interpret it that the Shevet of Levi stood at the bottom of the mountain, which is the simple implication of the pasuk in Yoshua. It says, "Kol Yisrael Zkeinu v'Sholtra v'Sholtav Omdu Mizeh Mizela Oren Neged HaKohanim Alavim Nosi Oren Bris Hashem." But it already says Nemar Lemala in Dvarim of Zion that Eli Yamdu Levarech Es Ha'am Al HaGrizim V'Yavrachem Es HaYarden Shimon V'Levi. So they stood up on top and not on the bottom. So therefore, v'yef shalomar lemala. But on the other hand, here's the paradox. It's impossible to say that Shevet Levi was on top of the mountain, Sharei, because the pasuk in Yoshua says kvar nemar lemata, that they were near the Aron, which is below the mountains. So Kate said, how do we reconcile this apparent contradiction? Ziknei kahuna lefia lemata. The elders of the Kohanim Levim were on the bottom, together with the Aron, and Hashar Lamala, but the balance of the Kohanim and Levim would be on top. Rabbi Yoshi Omer, he has a different way of reconciling these two psukim. Kol haroy l'sharis lamata. Those who could carry the Aron, and they were between the ages of 30 and 50, they were downstairs between the two mountains with the Aron. Vashar, and the balance, those who were older and were not qualified to carry the Aron, they would be up on top of the mountain. Rebbe Omer, Elu v'elu lemata imomtu. Yisrael and the Levim were down on the bottom in the, let's call it the valley, between the two mountains. And that's what it seems from the pasuk in Yoshua. And hafchu pneim klape hagrizim upaskel brak klape harei v'avasor. In other words, they were really down at the bottom and they turned towards the top of the mountain. Now the pasuk in Dvarim Chav Zayin says, "Eli yamdu levarchas ha'am al har grizim." Now Rebbe just finished telling us that they didn't climb the mountain, but rather they stayed on the bottom with the Aron. So how do you understand the pasuk that says, "Yamdu levarchas ha'am al har grizim"? They weren't standing on the mountain. And the Gemara answers that the word "al" doesn't necessarily mean on top of, but it could be besamach near. So they were in close proximity to the mountain. They didn't climb the mountain. And now Rebbe, in the following brisa, is going to prove that the word al means near something. And we're learning the parsha now of Lechem Aponim in Vayikra Chav Daled, Nasati al Ma'araches Levona Zakna. What is the word al? It sounds like the levono, which I think is translated into English as frankincense, would be laid down directly on top of the lechem. Rabbi Omer al besoma. The word al doesn't mean that the levono was placed on top of the entire mareches of lechem aponim, but rather it was placed close proximity to the mareches. And how do I know such a thing? How do I know to interpret the word al as samuch? Atomer al soma ve'enu al mamish. Maybe it means on top of it. Shu omer posuk in Shmos Perek Vav, and we're talking about the parochas that went over the Aron, and it says v'sakosa al ha'aron. Now it means to stretch a paroches over the Aron. And even though it says al ha'aron, it doesn't mean that the paroches would cover the Aron, because the paroches functioned as a mechitza that separated between kodesh lekodesh kadoshim. So it can't be that the paroches was placed directly on, or shall we say on top of the Aron, but rather over al besamach. The word al means near, but not on top of. And so too, in the case of Levona, the Levona is not going to be placed on top of the Lechem upon him, but rather on its side, but besamach. And therefore, the pasuk Elu Yamdu Levarchas Ha'amal Har Grizim, the Al Har Grizim doesn't mean that they climbed up the mountain, but rather they were summoned to the mountain. Now, the Mishnah says that when the Levium were Mevarches Yisrael, Hafku Pneim, the Levium turned towards Klape Har Grizim, Upasku Bebracha. Ton Rabbana. Baruch Bichlal. Now, the entire sugi that we're going to learn today, Mitzvah Hashem, in this brisa deals with the number of brisos that Klal Yisrael entered into in order to commit themselves to be Shomer HaMitzvos. So when Bnei Yisrael stood at Har Grizim and Har Eval, and they were blessed by the Leviim with a general bracha regarding the observance of all mitzvos, and the pasuk reads, Baruch Asher Yakim Es Kol Divrei HaTorah Zos, in a general sense, and that's called Klal. Baruch Befrat. Now there's a special bracha on each one of 11 mitzvahs. Like, for example, it says, Baruch Asher Lo Yaseh Pesel U'Masechet. Same thing in a mirror image with regard to the klolos. They accepted upon themselves a general klola or a bechlal, or Asher Lo Yokim is Divrei HaTorah Zos, and then there's or befrat on each one of those mitzvos that were enumerated there. Like, for example, or ha'isha sheyaseh pesel u'masecha, they were makabel that on themselves. So there was a Kabbalah in a general sense and in a specific sense. There was a curse for those who violate each mitzvah individually and a general or. And this has to do with the principle of Davar Sher B'chlal, Lo L'mayne Atzma Yotza, Kal Kula Yotza. And now, what the Bryce is going to do, it's going to enumerate 4 different obligations that apply to each one of the individual mitzvahs. What are those 4 obligations? Lilmod, Lilamed, Lishmar, Velasos. Every mitzvah in the Torah has these 4 parts to it. First of all, Lilmod, to learn the dinim, as the pasuk says, Ulamadetem osam. Then Ulalami, to teach the dinim of the mitzvos, as it says, Ulimadetem osam es penechem. Number 3, Lishmar, to observe the mitzvos, Ushmartem. And then Velasos means to implement the mitzvah before. Harei Arba. So this gives us 4 chiyuvim for each mitzvah. Now, what's the difference here between lishmar and lasos? He says here that lishmar means to constantly review one's learning and to ensure that he doesn't forget. Whereas lasos means the actual implementation of the mitzvah.